Hey guys, my name is Leo, and in this video we're going to be talking about note names and intervals. First, we're going to start off with note names, and there are a lot of different things that you can call notes in music, but the most common and basic way is by using their letter name. As you can see on the piano, we use letters A through G from the alphabet in a cycle to name the notes. And on music staffs, or the horizontal lines that we write music on, this is the same thing. For example, on this staff, this is the positioning of the notes. Notice how this has a treble clef, which is shown by that fancy little curly looking thing at the beginning of the staff. Another name for this clef is the G clef, because if you notice that tiny little curl in the center of it is curled around the G note. And this clef is most commonly used for higher voices because it's easier to write higher notes on this staff. Way you can remember which note goes where is using words for like acronyms, if you know what that is. So if you look at the bolded notes and the spaces on the lines, you can see that they spell F-A-C-E or face. And once you place those notes on the staff, you can fill in the rest using your knowledge of the alphabet. Another type of clef that's commonly used is the bass clef, and it's indicated by what looks like the right side of a heart and two dots on the outside of it. And this clef can also be called the F clef because if you look closely, the two dots are on either side of the line that you draw the F note on. This clef is easier to write lower notes on, and so it's typically used for lower voices like basses and tenors and baritones. And the notes on the bass clef look like this. If you see how the bolded notes and the spaces of the lines spell out A, C, E, G. Now this is different from the treble clef, but if you want, you can pause the video and try and think of an acronym that you can easily remember yourself. Or if you can't think of one, you can just remember the phrase, all cows eat grass. And then like the treble clef, you can fill in the notes between the ones you know in that phrase. There are also two other clefs called the tenor clef and the alto clef, but those are usually not used for choral singing, so you don't have to worry about them. Because the note names are used in continuous cycles, this means that there will be several notes with the same name, and the way we can tell the difference between these notes is to use numbers after them. For example, this note is C4, also known as middle C, and this note is C5, which is the C note that is to the right of C4. So the higher the number is after the letter one, the higher the octave. This is a great segue into the next part of our lesson, which is intervals. Now, intervals are the jumps between different notes, and they can differ in distance. We're going to discuss the 6 of the most common intervals and ways to memorize what they sound like. Now, the difference between the two notes mentioned before, the C4 and C5, is 8 notes, which we call an octave. You can recognize this sound if the notes sound the same, except if one is higher than the other. There are also the two dos of a major scale. The next interval is a first, also known as unison, and it sounds like this. Unison is when the exact same note is played twice, and it's called a first because the ending note is the same as the first note. Kind of makes sense. Now, the next interval is called a second, and if you can guess, it's up one note, then a first, and that sounds like this. And a second would be the interval, if any of you know solfege, from do to re. That's a second. Now, the next interval is called a third, or do mi, and it sounds like this. Now, a way you can remember this is it sounds like the my oh my warm-up. And the O syllable in the warm-up is a third from the starting note. Now the next interval is called a fourth, and it sounds like this. An easy way to know this interval is to remember the song Here Comes the Bride. You'll notice that the first two notes are a fourth. That last interval is a fifth, which sounds like this. A good song to remember that interval is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. As you can see, the first two words in the songs are the fifth interval. Alright, well, there are other intervals, but that wraps up our lesson on note names and intervals for this video, so thanks for tuning in.